Okay. All right. If you guys need anything, let me know.
So be sure it's not.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Oh, I'll tell you. It's from the big. When you see the hook coming and the music.
Good
starts.
morning. We're about to start, and we want to give our panelists as much time as we can. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Gordon Oliver. I'm the business editor of the Columbian. And thank you all for coming. We've worked hard to put together a panel that will give you some new information about things you're interested in and things that are happening in our community. And so it'll be led by Capeloto, who's the vice president of Riverview Bank. I've known him for quite a few years. And he'll lead this panel discussion, and after each person makes a presentation, you'll get an opportunity to ask questions from the audience. No cards this time, just raise your hand if you have a question. Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. Appreciate that. As we go through, it's going to be very casual, very laid back. If you can't hear the question or if you can't hear the responses, just please let us know. Just say a little louder. If you can overly hear our responses, then please maybe just do one of these things or something. Unless there are 10 people that do this, we're just going to continue to bellow. But if just one of you is sensitive in your ears, then sorry. I'm going to do a quick little intro for the four panelists, and then each of them will take a little bit of time and talk about who they are and what they do and what their organizations and companies do. And then we'll open it up to question and answer. So it'll be very, very simple. I'll start here with Troy Johns. Troy is with Urban Homes Northwest, and he's been doing this for 20 years. He's been actively involved in the development and construction of sustainable, healthy, and exceedingly energy-efficient communities. He has a holistic, low-impact development practice that lessens the impacts on our environments. Urban does a great job and is currently very active in many of the communities that we live in, and we see their high-quality products being built throughout Southwest Washington as well. As a leader in the building sciences, his advocacy work in both the private and public sectors resulted in the most sustainable building practices and healthy living initiatives in the Northwest. That is also about, when we're talking about embracing changes, that's something that when you speak with a different demographic than I'm in, it's something that is extremely important to them as they look for homes that they're buying. Moving forward, his mission as a green builder has been to cut energy consumption by a minimum of 50% over and above the Energy Star standards on all standard built homes and to drive the regional market towards the same end. He holds a variety of positions. He's been chairman of the board of the NGBS, which is Washington, D.C. based, and NGBS, I'll let him tell you what that is when it gets to him. Home Innovation Research Labs, he's on that board of directors. He's the chairman of the Vancouver Green Building Council, and he was the 2012 BIA Developer of the Year and the 2013 BIA Builder of the Year. So, Troy, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate that very much. To Troy's right is Carmen Villarma, the president of TMG, the management group, which was founded in 1985. As you heard earlier, this is her 30th anniversary, so congratulations, Carmen. This is a classic success story of starting with a very small property management company and expanding to what Carmen has built this into today. They have 5 different companies that provide property management, sales, and maintenance services for apartments, also for single-family homes and community associations in Washington and in Oregon. Carmen's very active in the real estate development, advising clients on project feasibility, value engineering concepts, floor plan, amenity designs. She basically is a one-stop shop for anything that you'd want to know with regard to feasibility and value engineering. She's a dedicated leader and volunteer in our community. She was the past chair of the Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce, and in fact, she was the one that got me to join the Chamber of Commerce as their CEO for a couple of years. I told her I'd do it for 90 days, stayed for 25 months. I'm not very good at math, evidently. And she has also been the past board member of the Clark College Foundation as well. She's her business and leadership mentor to several women-owned businesses in the Portland-Vancouver area, and her other accomplishments included being honored as one of the Women Executive of the Year by the Portland Business Journal and named one of the most powerful women in Clark County by the Columbian. So congratulations. Anybody that knows Carmen knows that last one, most powerful woman, it's a no-brainer. So to her right is Andrew Jones, who's the Vice President of Asset Management with PacTrust. He joined PacTrust in 1992 after several years with Prentice Properties in the Bay Area. He is in charge of the Columbia Tech Center in Vancouver and Portland area retail, office, and industrial properties. He graduated from Portland State University with a Bachelor's of Science in Business. He also holds a Juris Doctor degree from the Northwest School of Law at Lewis and Clark College and is a member of the Oregon State Bar. He's also a member of the International Council of Shopping Centers. Now, when I read that last night as I was going through this, my wife goes, "Oh, now that is a cool, the international." I said, "I think, honey, it's about developing the whole, never mind." Anyways. And to Andrew's right is Lee Schiller, who is a managing broker with Real Living, the real estate group. Lee has worked for 15 years as a licensed realtor, has over $100 million in sales to her credit. Consistently is listed in the top 10 of all Clark County agents, and in 2014 was in the top 5. Percent, sorry. Yeah. Listen, I'll moderate how I want. All right, top 5%. Evidently, we're going to go for accuracy here today. That's we'll work on that. Thank you, though, Lee. You're right. She also teaches real estate investments at Washington State University of Vancouver, or has done that for 2 summers as an adjunct professor. She has a variety of community entities that she's involved with, mostly in fundraising and marketing. She has also was a graduate of Northwestern University in Illinois with her master's, and also from Michigan State University with her bachelor's. She has also worked for companies. This was impressive because when I first read it, I thought, oh, okay, that's cool. And then I read what she did for these companies. She worked for Taco Bell. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. She was the director of national marketing for Taco Bell. That's a big deal. Coca-Cola, she was a manager of the Western Regional Marketing, and the Pillsbury Company, she was in charge of strategic planning. So the community service that she is involved in the county is wide, but it includes such organizations as Innovative Services, Community Services Northwest, St. Jude's Children's Hospital, the Haug Foundation, YWCA, Congregation Columbian, East Vancouver Child Care Center, Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, and as was stated earlier, I finally just stopped the list because we only have so much time. We want to be able to hear from the panelists. So please join me in welcoming our panelists today. And with that, we'll start with Troy, and we'll just work our way down, if that works. And each of them is going to take somewhere in the 5 to 7 minute range. Let us know what it is, why they do it, what about their companies, other things that we might want to know, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. Troy?
Thank you. I appreciate being invited here today. Does it sound okay? Everybody can hear that pretty well. Urban Northwest has been around for about 7 years. I started in land development about 20 years ago, and never really gave a thought to green or what green was in my mind. If you would ask me, I would have said it was a joke and it was a marketing ploy, and that's all there is to it. And if you believe that, it's a bunch of hocus pocus, and so are you. And so that's the foundation of where I came from. But then I married a woman who had respiratory issues, and we didn't know why she had them. She just had them her whole life, and it's just something we dealt with because I loved her, you know. And so as time went on, we were together for quite a while. We went on a vacation together, and we were in this town, and we were there 5 days. And of the 10 days that we were there, for the first 5 days it rained. And so we sat inside of the rental house that we had rented, and within that 5 days, she didn't have asthma anymore. And then we were just kind of like, well, this is crazy. It must be the climate out here. We're going to have to move. That's the bottom line. So the rain stopped, the sunshine came out, we got on the bikes, and all the asthma came back. So it took us a little while, but we realized that it was those 5 days of playing board games and being miserable in the house and tired of each other. The house is what did it. And so our next mission was to go hire a green builder here in Vancouver and get a house built. And so we did exactly that. And a year later, we moved out of that house because it didn't do anything for us. And so then, of course, I started digging in a little late to the show, trying to figure out what was different about that house and how we could build our next house that could accommodate her. And that's when I started researching green building techniques. Again, it was a joke, but this might make sense because my wife has an issue, and so that kind of got me in the door. And pretty soon I learned how to do it. We built a house, and we no longer have asthma issues in our family. So that said, that house was on a scale of 1 to 10. If a code-built house, which is the worst house you can build by law, if a code-built house is a 1, this house was a 2. but it made a massive difference in our lives. And so from that point, I said, okay, well, if it'll make that kind of difference in respiratory issues, what other kinds of things are here? Is there something else real and green and pretty quick energy consumption? I mean, these types of things started to poke their head out, and it made a lot of sense. And so within a few years, and this was about 4 years ago now, we had done a lot of research, and I built what's Clark County's first net zero Emerald House, which was a National Green Building Standard home. The people have no utility bills in their house, and they receive $1,500 a year in checks from the power company. And so from that point on, obviously it took us a while to get there, but from that point on, we do about 100 homes a year. All of our homes now are certified green homes through the NGBS. I had poked around quite a bit, and so I was asked to chair the board of NGBS back in Washington, D.C., and everything has kind of changed. But it all started with a vacation, which I guess is where most things should start. So since then, we've really focused on durability of homes, the technology that we put in homes, and this has uniquely put us in front of this millennial generation that is now buying up our homes. We had a community in Pebble Creek. It's off 14 up here. We sold all the homes in there in about 8 months, and it was majority of that was all millennials. They love our product. This is what we didn't really set out for this. I wish I could say that was a strategy that I had, but it really wasn't. I was in green for a different reason. And so now they want everything in their home. They want to, I mean, our homes can remind you if you leave the heat on and you take off. When you get so far from the house, your phone will say, did you mean to leave the heat on in the house? Did you want to turn the heat off right now? Because I'll do it for you. And you can turn the heat off in the house, or you can shut the lights off that you forgot. Flip side of that are an older generation that are looking for technology as well in their homes, because if you put LED lights on your outside lights and you have panic buttons in your house and you have a fall, the outside lights on your driveway will flash red and blue, red and blue. And so as the paramedics are on their way, obviously they know how to find your house, but that sure is going to help them out when the house is glaring in their face. And so, and not to mention your neighbors, if you have a problem or fall in your house, your neighbors will see something and call the police for you. So anyway, that's kind of where we came from and how we got here. And I'll pass it on.
Awesome. Carmen?
Well, we are celebrating our 30th year in business, and I did start in a little office. Oops. I forgot.
Like the paparazzi was
I did start my company with myself and Nancy Bonander, who has since retired, 30 years ago in a little office off of Gare Road. And we are one of the few management companies that grew not just with one particular product in mind. We were involved with the community, with a lot of business people in the community, and so we branched out. We started with single-family homes, which we have a really large, probably the largest portfolio of single-family homes in Oregon and Washington. But we do apartment communities now. We do a lot of construction lease-ups. We have a very large division that manages condominium and HOA associations. We have our own in-house maintenance to serve that, and we also do commercial. And so, all of those, you might think that those are all a separate type of businesses. Yes, they are, but they also are all very integrated. And a lot of you, I'm sure, have that same type of plan where it's cross integrating, cross selling. I mean, tenants that want to buy houses, because we do have a small sales division. We have investors that own not only apartments, but they own single family. They also bought one of the commercial buildings that was in foreclosure in the recession, and so all that mixes together, and we were able to to take advantage of all of that. We did go from it's taken a long time. We really grew organically, except for two small other companies that we purchased, and we did grow from 2 employees to I believe we're about at 116 at this point. So one of the things I noticed, I don't know if anybody else did, the keynote speakers when they were talking about affordable housing this morning, and Scott Bailey kind of jumped in, because I don't think a lot of people, depending on what kind of consumers your company has, you may not really know what affordable housing is. And there's different versions of affordable housing. And so we're pretty deep in housing, right? Our company is the one that, unfortunately for some tenants, are getting really large rent increases. If you, last year, if you rented on the west side of Vancouver, just a regular 2-bedroom, 2-bath property, You probably paid $950, $970 for it. This last October, you would have paid $1,070 for it. And on top of that, you probably are paying at least your pro rata share of all your utilities. Same thing happened on East Vancouver, although a little less percentage. 14% on West Vancouver is what the rents went up between 2014 and 2015. We have a lot of, I'm sure you've seen apartment communities under construction. We don't have it certainly as many as across the river, but we do have quite a few. I don't believe that the number, we have about 1,300 units under construction. I don't believe that number is really going to affect the inventory per se. I think there's a lot of demand out there, a fair amount of pent-up demand. The two things that drive our rental market, our residential rental market, is the sales market and the availability of inventory in the rental market. And those of you that have been through multiple cycles, you know what happened when the sales market catches fire and just takes off, right? A lot of good things happen from that, but from our rental side, every tenant that can will buy a house. What does that do to our vacancy rate? I mean, our vacancy rate goes up, our rents go down. You've heard all the free rent or giveaways or concessions, all that sort of thing starts to happen. Well, one of the things that's happened now, which is an anomaly in my years in business, is that rents are on their way up and so are sales prices. That typically has not happened at the same time. And it looks like it's going to continue to happen in 2016. It's election year, 2017, who knows, kind of all bets are off in terms of that. So one of the... when we're talking about affordable housing, I believe it was Scott Bailey that talked about, that most stats say that rent shouldn't exceed 30% of your income, and he is correct. That's starting to go up. That is one of our requirements. It is also a standard requirement for almost all management companies that they don't want to see that any higher. I do think unless something happens with regard to wages in our county, we're going to have to, meaning the management companies, we're going to have to allow for that. Just like we allowed for all the bankruptcies and foreclosures that happened through the recession. You go to rent from a company now, and that's not a mark against you because it happened to so many people. Regarding some of the investors in Clark County, we have seen there was a lot of infill lots because they got foreclosed on, banks held them, a lot of infill lots, and not big ones, anywhere from maybe 8 to 30 to 40 lots. So a lot of our own local investors and builders were buying these up, and they didn't buy them up to sell. They bought them as investments, and so that's been a big trend. We've seen a lot of that happening, all this past year, and we actually are seeing that now. And they're very nice townhomes. I mean, they're all attached products, but they're very nice townhomes. And I think a lot of the people that are coming out of homes that don't really want to live in an apartment per se, a townhome is a whole different deal. And so that market's been well. We actually have a program for that. It's called SCRIP, Small Community Rental Properties. In a single-family market. So we are big in the single-family market. I think you probably saw Wall Street got into the single-family market because there were so many foreclosures across the country. And so Wall Street, they bought huge amounts of those. And, they contracted the companies like mine to manage those. And so we did a lot of that in Portland, not so much in Clark County. A lot of actual investors in Clark County are the ones that purchased our single-family. We had about 8% of our portfolio in Clark County sell last year. And those weren't the actual investors. Those were what we call investors by default. They were people that were underwater in their properties. They actually could do better by renting their property than paying their own mortgage. Okay? And so now that the property's better, they've sold and are either reinvesting their money or renting apartments. Talk a little bit about HOAs really quick. How many of you have ever been in an HOA, belonged in an HOA? Kinda, okay. We love them, don't we? So HOAs, when we went through the recession, HOAs horrible things happened to HOAs. People were foreclosed on. They couldn't pay their homeowners dues, let alone pay their mortgage, right? And so you had to pay dues in order to pay your landscaper to maintain the property. So many associations got hit so hard. I mean, they could barely keep up the insurance. And so maintenance wasn't getting done. Now all that's passed. So that is looking really good. Their values are really going back up. You're finally seeing, much more increase in condominium sales too, which I think for everybody, there's a fair amount of condominiums in Clark County. So I'll stop. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Andrew Jones with PacTrust. PacTrust was formed in 1972 in Portland. We own and manage about 13 million square feet of real estate, predominantly in the Portland area, but in other markets as well. Our partners are the state of Washington, through the Washington State Investment Board, the state of Washington Public Employees Retirement System, as well as the Oregon Public Employees Retirement System. And we're a real estate investment for those retirement plans. And because of that partnership structure, we have a very long-term, patient approach to the development of real estate. And I think that that's the story for Columbia Tech Center. Columbia Tech Center started in 1996. It was originally a purchase of 190 acres, including the Tektronix campus. And I think that, the original vision for Columbia Tech Center was for it to be a business park with a tech focus. And I think because of the development agreement, the flexible development agreement, and the partnership that we had with Clark County and with the city of Vancouver, it's evolved over time. And if you go to Columbia Tech Center today, between 164th and 192nd, you'll see, there's 3.6 million square feet of buildings there, and you'll see apartments. You'll see the Columbia Valley Elementary School. You'll see the Clark College East Campus. You'll see a Central Park. You'll see 2 shopping centers. And so it's truly become this mixed-use development that has, I would say, evolved from its original tech heritage into a mixed-use development that continues to evolve. And so, the theme of this discussion, building for Clark County's future, I would probably look backward just a few years. The 3 panelists, Peace Health, Nautilus, and CUNY are all at Columbia Tech Center. And I think that the deals and working with those companies highlight, what building for Clark County's future is going to mean, at least on the commercial side of things. Peace Health came to town very cost conscious, needed a lot of square footage. Looked at the former tech building, which had become the Hewlett-Packard campus, had been Nautilus's campus, and then as Nautilus downsized, was basically vacant. And so here you have this 480,000 square foot building, which is the equivalent basically of a 25-story downtown building on 3 levels. And not much had been done to it for 10 years, and they walked in and they could see the promise, but you kind of had these low ceilings and kind of a dark look to it. And they said, gosh, a lot of what's here makes sense. We love the amenities at Columbia Tech Center. We love the schools. We love the housing. But what can we do with this building? And we worked with TVA Architects out of Portland for our first experience of what office space wants to be today. And that was taking a lot of these low drop ceilings out, getting a lot of natural light, taking out a lot of private offices and having very open workspaces with breakout areas. If you do need privacy or you need to meet with a group, you have conference rooms, you have cafes, you have a workout fitness area. That's the way that the companies want to work, the way that the employees want to work within these companies. And so that was an adaptive reuse. I think adaptive reuse will be part of building for Clark County's future. CUNY similarly came into a single story, what we call a flex office building. It had been built out in a traditional kind of drop ceiling for us, dark wood, brass kind of build out. And they said, gosh, we're this cutting edge luxury car company, and we want this to be the CUNY garage. And so, out came all the ceilings, and out came the carpet off the floor, and we have, they have a polished concrete floor and an espresso bar and a mini showroom and overhead glass garage doors and a high-tech sales center, for lack of a better term. And so that was a reuse, again, a reuse of an existing building. Nautilus was displaced out of the building for Peace Health and HP. We had available land at Columbia Tech Center, and we continue to have about 70 acres of developable land. And so we built them a new building. Again, a lot of these same concepts, very open collaboration areas, a lot of natural light, and we're able to build them a new building. And then finally, not part of the panel today, but Banfield Pet Hospital, we're currently under construction with that building. Clearly building, for Vancouver's future in terms of what companies want in terms of a corporate campus. This is a 200,000 square foot project, about $75 million in construction costs before they put their improvements in it. And they're taking all of those things, light, bright, open, cafe, dog wash, dog park, and taking it to another level because of what they do. They're in the pet care industry. So for example, to get from the first to the second to third floor, we have elevators and we have stairs, but we also have a series of ramps that are dog friendly because they can bring their pets to work. And so I think, building for Clark County's future in terms of the commercial office side of things is listening to what employers want and derivatively what their employees want, and that's those friendly, open environments that are close to amenities. We have a lot of retail within Columbia Tech Center. We're starting to bring more non-chain restaurants because that's what people want, and we're trying to get them to be very walkable within where people are working within Columbia Tech Center. And so we always had this central park at Columbia Tech Center and some nice tree-lined streets, and we kind of developed here and there and everywhere, but now we're stepping back and saying, but is it really walkable? Is it really bikeable? And so we're focusing on, adding new paths and networks so that you can walk and get around within Columbia Tech Center, not only to get to those restaurants and shops, but within the last several years, something new to us, which is to bring a place to live within Columbia Tech Center. And so we've built over 500 multifamily residential units within Columbia Tech Center, some of them in the traditional kind of garden apartment type of environment, but most recently last summer we opened a 4-story loft style building on our park that has an average of 450 square foot units in it. And that's the type of thing that you'd see in the Pearl District or in urban areas. And it's full. We went out on a limb to do that in the burbs, but it is true. The millennials, the people that work for Fisher Investment, and the young people that are probably going to work for Fisher Investments Banfield and other corporate headquarters we might bring in, they want, a high style, cool place to sleep and hang out a little bit, but they live their life outside, right? They live their life out doing things. And I'd say the last thing that we're doing probably to enhance that or to build for the future is to continue to focus on the type of restaurants and venues that people that are living and working within Columbia Tech Center want. We have we've signed a lease with a brew pub, a local brew pub in a building that's going to be right in the center, kind of our town center, and then on a portion of that we're going to have a food hall. People say, well, what's a food hall? I say, well, it's kind of an evolution of what the food court was at the mall, except that there's no mall and it's cooler. So, but it gives us an opportunity to take a 2,000 or 3,000 square foot space and put 4 or 5 little restaurants in it. Maybe it's, kind of an evolution for a food truck. And so that the restaurateur with a good idea and some artisan foods or coffees or ice cream or whatever can come in with minimal investment and hit the ground running in an environment that people can come to and try something different and hang out. And I think that those are the types of things that we're trying to do. We're trying to move from, the office space or the environment that maybe, your dad worked in or your uncle, and evolve it to what today's, corporate employers, small businesses want for their employees. So that's what we're up to.
This I think I need. Can everyone hear me? So I'm telling a little bit of a different story because I'm in residential real estate. When we moved here 23 years ago, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had been in corporate America, but I was bored out of my mind because I didn't know anybody, and I'm a type A personality, and I was stuck at home with my son. I mean, I was happy to be home with my son. And somebody in my exercise class connected me to the YWCA and said, oh, we could use some help. And so I'd never done this before, but I started procuring things for their auction and asking for money. And I didn't know anybody in town, so I just used the telephone book, which we actually had back then. And I went through the yellow pages, and I'd go to antiques, art, AA. And nobody here said no. Nobody said no. And it was amazing to me that this community had such big hearts. I mean, it was open right away. The arms were open. The people were welcoming. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. And they were willing to support other agencies in the community. And I just thought this was such a great place. And I've been all over the world. I've lived all over the world. And this is the first time I've ever seen this. So to have that kind of support, I think somebody, Bruce Casanave, I don't know how to say his name, mentioned it too, how they felt so welcome when they first moved here. But it's just been amazing. And to me, once my kids were in school, I got my real estate license. It's an easy sell. It's like we do have everything going for us here. We've got the tax situation, we've got the airport, we've got the schools, but we have the people. You guys should be really proud of yourselves. This is not like anywhere else, and I have to just keep reinforcing that. And so when I get clients from out of town, it's really easy to say, you gotta live here. I mean, don't even look anywhere else. We're the most affordable metro area on the West Coast, and we've got all this going for us, and the people are so wonderful. And so it just has been a wonderful career. And I have to say, a few years ago, a bunch of us were working for Prudential, which is now owned by Warren Buffett and has become Berkshire Hathaway. But we broke away and started a franchise called Real Living. Real Living, funnily enough, is also owned by Warren Buffett. How many people out there work for Warren Buffett? How many work for Warren Buffett and don't know it yet? Yeah, I mean, he's taken over. So, but we're kind of more the grassroots, community-oriented real estate firm. And we are owned by a mom and pop. I call them mom and dad, but Chad and Holly Sessions are the owners of our firm. And they've been just extremely supportive and helpful in coaching people and helping people in their real estate career. Real estate's very entrepreneurial, but we are also very technology driven. And so one of the things that's happened in our industry is that sometimes the consumer gets information faster than we do. And it's not always that good. I've got people calling me and saying, hey, this house just came back on the market and I want to see it. And I'm like, it did? So it's really a challenge to keep up with the speed of information delivery to the consumer. And the other thing that happens is our technology can allow us to do things we never could before. Right in the middle of this morning's breakfast, I got a frantic text message from a vendor that was at one of my listings trying to do a repair, and he said, I can't get in. And I was able, from my cell phone, to give him a code for the lockbox that was on the door so that he could get in and make the repair. So, I mean, that's not the good old days. This is all new technology. Pretty soon we're going to be running our business right from our phone, all of it from our phone. And so our company has in 3 years gone from a new company in town to, I believe we have, I'm not sure of the numbers, 4th or 5th market share in the Clark County area as far as sales. And highest, we're one of the highest in productivity per agent, which means we sell more, each agent sells more deals per agent than a lot of the other companies. So I do think that's all a part of the technology support that we get. We've got it structured so that the agent can be out with the people more and less in the office. Again, like you were saying, we've developed our office environment to look like a Starbucks. So you can go in, you can put your computer down, and you can do what you need to do and go away. So there's not as much hard cost in renting the space because it's flexible use, and not very many people actually have offices anymore. We just work off our computer and our phone. The interesting thing here is, you know, that we're talking about, are we approaching, is there a housing bubble? Is this going to happen? You know, we're a desirable place to live. I don't see that changing. I think there's always going to be a demand. But in the past 2 years, we've really had the lowest inventory level we've ever had. And this past month, it was down to 1.9 months of inventory on the market, which is the lowest it's ever been. And what that means, it's similar to what Carmen was saying, but we have an anomaly going on where the prices, there's upward pressure on the prices because of the demand, but yet people can't afford to buy the first-time homes. They're competing with investors that are bringing cash in, and they get kicked out of the market, and so they end up renting, but then the rental rates are going up. So I really do think affordable housing is a huge issue and is going to become a bigger issue in Clark County. And I know there are organizations working on it right now, but I would encourage any of you to get involved with that. It's going to be a dilemma, and it's kind of not fair. I feel bad for my first-time homebuyers that have to qualify for a loan, and loans are harder to get than they were before, and interest rates are going to start going up again. And then they've got people coming in with cash who just want to buy because the rental rates are going up so they can get a better deal with their rents. So that's I think our biggest issue facing our industry right now. And the final thing I think I want to say is about speed of the info being communicated to the consumer. That information isn't necessarily knowledge. So I would also encourage you to ask your realtor or your expert person that you go to for more information than what is provided on Zillow or Trulia or the internet, because you may not know that that house went through foreclosure or had a bad foundation, or that there are tests that can be done like radon, like you were talking about, Troy, with your wife, that might protect you if there are environmental issues with the property. So it's really good to have an expert on your side. Even though you have the information, it doesn't really mean you know what to do with it. So that, I think I'll stop there. I tried to talk as fast as Carmen did. I'm not sure if I did.
Well, you know what, Lee? You did 7 minutes and 53 seconds. You had 8. You had 8 minutes, so that was very impressive.
Perfect.
I don't know how many times you practiced, but you really knocked it out of the park. So at this point, if there are, we'll open it up to, first of all, thank you all for your information and for giving us some background on each of you. At this point, we'll open it up to any questions that there might be from the audience, and you can either direct it to all of them, you can direct it to one of them in particular.
My question is for Troy, actually. So you're talking about green housing and such. So obviously the pros are very, very apparent. So are there any sort of like regulations or laws that are pushing for houses to become green, or do you have to actually start from the ground up to actually demolish a house and make a new one?
So there is a path through the National Green Building Standard for remodeled homes to achieve certification, because a lot of it has to do with waste and materials that you use on the site and whatnot. But no, there is no push. I work with a lot of cities and counties to try to get them to adopt the NGBS as a voluntary standard, and then give out incentives to builders who will go down that path. Clark County has adopted it. The City of Vancouver, we just got to adopt it. I know Mayor Onslow was here a second ago. We're working on him out in Richfield. But no, they're not. And the reason is, there's a couple of these, but the reason is the lobbyists. I mean, I'm a builder, but the building group's completely against it and won't support anything, which is embarrassing to me. Secondly, no, there's regulation for outdoor air, EPA does, but indoor air, there's not. And we're putting in a massive amount of chemicals into our homes. And the lobbyists, again, are spending all the money they can possibly spend so that we do not know what is in those products. So when your house is built, who knows what goes into it? Not even the builder knows what goes into it, to be honest with you. I mean, things that are pretty like granite countertops, they emit radon. So nobody tells you that until after you buy the house. But, you know, in the state of Washington, they finally said, if you have so much granite in your house, you have to put a radon detector in your house. So it's going that way, but real slow because of lobbyists. And I'm all about capitalism and everything, but sometimes the lobbyists get a little out of control. So.
Other questions? David?
For
Sorry.
Great to see you building again. I love our senior division. Carmen, where's the biggest shortage, and is there enough units coming online to reach people living in the little market? And how many units do you see additional needing to be built at the beginning?
So are you asking what geographic area?
Geographic area, and also how many more units do you think?
All right. You know, there's about 1,300 under construction now. I think there's, you know, close to twice that's in some sort of planning stages. And again, if you think about it, you know, that's throughout, you know, the entire county. I don't know that, again, that's going to have a huge impact just because of the demand. Areas that I think, you know, are somewhat underserved, which this goes back to the affordable question scenario, is, you know, there's the big fourth plane corridor. You know, there's a lot of housing that is more affordable there than anywhere else, right? But I'm sure you've watched what's happening is that, you know, large companies, actually not from our area even, you know, come in and they bought them up and they rehabbed them, and now they're really not per se affordable any longer. You know, just looking at some of the stuff, you know, downtown Vancouver, I think some of the new housing that's went in downtown Vancouver has actually driven up the price. So downtown Vancouver has, in one sense, almost less affordable housing because of all the new stuff going in, because that's diluted the percentage for the older stuff that was affordable, which frankly is also starting to really take some jumps going up. You know, tenants are trying to move out into more rural areas, and I don't want to mean rural. I don't mean rural in that sense. I mean, you know, Ridgefield, Camas, you know, on the Portland side, they're moving out, you know, to Gresham, where there's a little bit older, you know, housing stock. People sometimes aren't willing to commute from, you know, Washougal, although Washougal's got some new stuff going on. We have a new 55 and older product, 126 units that we're building in Riverview on 3rd Avenue that we're going to be starting this year, and we've had huge interest in that. And that's not affordable housing per se, but it is 55 and older.
Awesome.
Can I speak on that real quick? I sat on Tim Levitt's Affordable Housing Task Force, and there is no help coming. That's the bottom line. There's no land. So, I mean, I don't mean to be, there's like 5,000 units or something that we're short right now. And we have, I think the city's plan that they're adopting accounted for like 400 of them or something. After we spent like a year together trying to figure out a way to do that, we created like 400 units. Don't quote me on the exact units, but no, there's no help coming. The county's not releasing land. The infrastructure isn't out there yet. Not the county's fault, but they're not. And I'll tell you, one of the things that we need incentives to open up land in the county if you're doing affordable housing. The infrastructure might not be there, but if it's fairly close and the project can afford to bring it in, if it's an affordable housing unit, then it should be brought in. So,
Awesome. David?
This is a question for Andrew. How much land is left in Columbia County to develop?
We just purchased, or in the process of purchasing, 52 acres to the north of us, so we've closed on a portion of that. So currently we have 71 acres, and then when we finish closing on the rest of that, we'll have right at 100 acres of developable land.
Andrew, what does that translate to in using an average for total square footage that you might have available on that? I know it depends on if it's custom build or what it is, but generally speaking.
Yeah, it is flexible, and we anticipate kind of the current mix of residential and office, and probably a little less retail than we currently have. But our COO is in the back of the room, Dave Ramus. He's really good at math in his head. So 100 acres, how many square feet?
Roughly.
On a commercial basis, maybe 1 million feet, but
Okay.
as Andrew said, you know, probably be a mix, you know, there might be 500 or 600 units of apartments in that.
Sure.
Yeah.
We've been there 20 years, and
Yeah.
probably another 10 years of supply.
Great.
We have 380 acres developed at 3.7 million square feet, so that's probably about right. So thanks for the save.
Thanks. Nice that you brought your wingman.
I did.
That's awesome. By the way, the brew pub that you're putting in is right next to my second office.
Next to it,
Yeah,
yeah.
literally right next. And the food court area is a huge hit with the 80 employees we have out there. So don't drop the ball on that.
We won't. We're doing what we can.
All right, thanks.
Think that'll be absorbed in the next 10 years?
if you had asked me in 2012, I would probably thought that it wouldn't be done in my career, but I think so. I think 10 years is about right, especially given the kind of interest that we're seeing from these corporate headquarters users.
You have a question?
So my question is for Carmen. How is the demand from Portland on the Vancouver market, and also the existence of kind of a state divide line between the housing markets, kind of a unique situation, how has that affected rent either positively or negatively?
Are you talking about the in-migration from Portland to Vancouver?
Kind of between both.
Yeah, this goes back to that commute that we all love so much, which is a way bigger conversation than we're going to have here. We actually do see a fair amount of people. The commute is easier coming from Portland to Vancouver when everybody else is going the other way. Okay, and so we actually do have a fair amount of employees, in fact, that work for me that live in Portland because it's the opposite of everybody else's commute. So we are seeing more Portland people actually. Wanting to live over here, and just in general moving over here. We have a lot of millennials, in fact. I don't know whether it's, Troy may be able to speak a little bit about that. We just have a lot of younger people, I think, that looking for something different. Portland's getting pretty expensive too. I mean, just in general, their rents are higher. I mean, everything is higher, I believe, over there. So does that answer your question? Kind of? Okay.
Other questions? Gary, sorry.
Gary Bachman, Carmen Engineering, Smith Root. I'm interested in commercial development and what you see as the future of commercial development as we try to bring some additional jobs over to Clark County and how you see that shaking out in the next 10, 15 years. Maybe Andrew, maybe.
Well, no, and let me tack onto that. Along with that commercial development, you're going to need to have, just like you have done out in the east side, is the folks now want to live closer to where they work. They don't, if they're going to not have a car or whatever they want to be able to bike to work or walk to work. So that would pretty much encompass any and all of you. So
Yeah, I mean, Columbia Tech Center, we talk about the big tenants, or sometimes we're known for the big tenants, but the preponderance of our tenants are 5,000 square feet and less, and so they're the local businesses or small branch offices. And so really a big component of our future development has to continue to be buildings that are flexible for those smaller tenants, down to as small as 1,200 square feet. And so I think that I don't want that to kind of get lost in the message, that the future for our commercial office development will be buildings that are flexible, that can be what we call demised down or cut down to pretty small office spaces. By the same token, having these large contiguous pieces of land that are there, in this great environment, the tax advantages of being in Washington State, the great schools, the more affordable housing. I'm not talking about probably affordable housing in the apartment context, but more affordable housing for the the $50,000 to $100,000 a year jobs that come with these corporate campuses. We have the ability at Columbia Tech Center, and I think Clark County and Vancouver probably have an edge over Portland with being able to accommodate the interest from out of the area to come in to make for these corporate users to make that investment. And we're talking 15 to 20-year time horizon investments in moving a bunch of people here and hiring for people from out of the area. So it's going to be a part of those bigger corporate users are going to be part of our future. But again, so is sort of the slow and steady construction of buildings that accommodate the smaller tenants as well.
Lee, can you address this? Are you finding that your clients that are looking to buy homes is that a factor, that I'd like to be closer to where I work, or I don't want as long a commute, or I want to be able to bike or walk, or, I mean?
It's a huge factor, huge. And so a lot of the areas that used to be very desirable that are out in rural areas of Clark County are having trouble getting their houses sold at almost any price. Where they used to be $1 million homes, they're selling for in the 700s, 600s, which is a huge decline. Because, and then the demand that's closer in, especially close to tech center, I've noticed, the houses are going for really high prices, where in other parts of the county, they don't justify that high of a price per square foot, but it's all because there's so much building going on in that tech center area, and that's where people are hiring, and that's where people want to live, Camas, Fisher's Landing, all that East County stuff. That's what I'm really finding. The hospital's the big employer on the west side, but all those other people are down on the east side, and there's a huge amount of buying, trying to go on the east side of Vancouver. Huge interest.
Okay, great, thanks. Gordon?
It's a question for Lee and also maybe for Troy. Some of the national builders are adding space. You mentioned that people are working out of their cars and their homes, their phones in their homes. What kind of demand is there for homes where you have adequate office space or that kind of mixed use or maybe a rental unit for a multi-generational family?
So that's a hot button right now, that multi-generational family thing. I think it's two separate questions as far as office space. You can work anywhere, so I don't think office space in the home is a big deal. It's not as big as it used to be. You can work off the kitchen counter because it's so technology oriented. You just carry your devices around with you. But the big buzzword in our industry right now is multi-generational living, and I know there's a couple builders that are building apartments in the homes that they're selling so that older parents can live there, or children can live there with their families, and it is getting to be very popular. I'm just wishing, honestly, that the builders would do a better job of designing those because they're tiny or they're dark, or I would have to commit suicide if I lived in one of those. So they're not quite right, but the idea is right, but the execution hasn't reached perfection yet. Troy, did you?
Yeah, I'd like an answer from each of the panelists about what their opinion is of what the county council should do with respect to the comp plan. The county staff is recommending that alternative 4 be rejected, alternative 1 be selected. That alternative is a status quo alternative and does nothing to reverse the extreme downzoning that occurred in the 94 plan. So I'd like
Okay.
to hear each one of the panelists tell us what they think the county council should do with respect to the comp plan.
And before you respond to that, because that is an answer that could go on for an hour per person, I would just ask you to keep it relatively concise as we go on that one. It's a great question, though. And thanks for being patient. I'm sorry I overlooked you a minute ago. Who wants to go first?
I'll start since I'm on the end here, yeah. I don't think that they should go forward with it. Mostly because I know it gives people the right to split up properties. But what it's going to do is it's going to, I've been a developer now for 27 years. It's going to stifle all development in the next generation. And so all your large pieces of land are going to get broken up into smaller pieces of land. And I can tell you from a developer's point of view, I cannot develop a small piece of land. I have to rebuy them and put them all together to get one subdivision. And then smaller developments aren't laid out right. Like you can. You don't have the flexibility you do with a larger piece of ground. So the quality of life in Vancouver for the next generation is going to suffer, period. They're going to have to build houses somewhere else. If you want bigger houses on estates around this current city, then I think it's great. It just depends on your opinion of, you know, what you think the direction is. And I think for development, it hurts us.
Carmen?
I can actually see both sides of that. I don't know that. I probably align more a little bit with Troy on that because you have seen developments where they're very chopped up, and it is difficult. And it's difficult for builders to get an economies of scale when you have some very small development versus a large development that you can get some economies of scale. So small developments, I mean, the prices go up because the infrastructure costs more. I don't know. And I also, you know, I see, you know, if I was a large landholder out there too and had been in my family for a long time and I wanted to be able to do something, you know, with it for my family and, you know, the generations, you know, my grandkids, then, you know, I can absolutely understand that. Unfortunately, it's going to be one of those controversial decisions that no matter how it ends up, it's not going to be fair. I just don't see how it actually can be.
Andrew?
You know, I can speak about Columbia Tech Center. So Columbia Tech Center, our future will be to continue to densify. We have a development agreement, and so that gives us a little bit of a different regulatory framework to develop within. One of the things that Greg Goodwin was talking about, the future of cars and cars driving themselves, and maybe your car takes you to work and then drives off and does something else. And so, we think about that as we plan. There's still a huge demand for a lot of parking with office buildings. They trying to get more employees within office space, and so you need a lot of parking. But we look at a site plan with a lot of parking to accommodate today's requirement and say, how can we add future buildings, in that parking area to continue that density. So I'm not speaking specifically to your question, but within Columbia Tech Center, we like the flexibility of a development agreement, and within that environment, we are definitely proponents of density and higher density over time.
Lee?
I kind of am like Carmen, not sure what side I really come down on because I see pros and cons on both sides. A lot of people bought their big properties to have big properties, and a lot of people wanted to be around other people that had big properties. I see the appeal of splitting them into smaller parcels, but I also see the appeal of keeping things the way they are. So I'm a Libra. I can't help it.
Any other questions? Yes.
Since there has been a lot of growth, there's going to continue to be a lot of growth, I feel, and from what I'm hearing from you, that's true. How do you feel, I'll just address the whole panel, how do you feel that the cities, the county, and the state has done in the way of infrastructure, roads, and other types of infrastructure? Are they doing their part, or no?
Who wants to take that one? How do you feel about the support and the infrastructure that's being placed by the governmental entities? Troy?
I think it's okay. I mean, I'd give them a C somewhere in there. I think that in the last 20 years, there's been a lot of planning done. I think in the 20 years prior to that, there wasn't any planning done. So what they're running up against is they're having to work within the confines of a plan that's 40 years old, and it doesn't really work. And not to mention the infrastructure replacement that they have to keep up on. So I give them a lot of leeway, but yeah, at the same time, it's really difficult. They come up with concepts, and not to get on a development tangent here, but they come up with concepts, and you come in with a 20-acre parcel, and they say, well, this is our plan for this area. It doesn't really make sense. They got a bridge that's got to be built on the next property, but they say they're going to build it so they can have through traffic. So you're required to do all these things for a bridge, that may or may not get built. I don't know what developer is going to pay for a bridge on a 20-acre parcel. So some of the planning, I don't know where we get the planners. Sometime I hope there's some planner in the room. But for the most part, I'd say they're really good, but C on follow through.
Anybody else want to chime in on that, or
No?
Andrew? That's okay. Andrew?
We've ended up building a lot of the infrastructure within Columbia Tech Center, either on our own or through a public-private partnership. The mill plane that goes right through Columbia Tech Center was a public-private partnership. And when we participate in those improvements, we'll end up, on traffic improvements, we'll end up with SDC credits or traffic impact credits that apply to our future development. So we've found that that partnership approach and working with transportation in the city has worked pretty well. I think that this transportation funding plan, for the maintenance of streets that are already built, and for the construction of priority streets such as First Street that runs on the north boundary of our property, that's a good sign. But again, we still, we would like to see First Street as it goes along in the north part of our property drop down, because we're in an area that was mined down, and so the city staff has been, or transportation staff has been very cooperative in working with us on ideas to lower that street where maybe we contribute some right of way and they build it. So we've had good experience when you're involved, and you can get that public-private partnership dynamic going.
Awesome. We are just about ready to wrap this up, so I'm gonna do one question for you all, and you have 20 seconds apiece to respond. So that's it. It's just literally the first right off the top of your head. Going back to the theme of embracing change, what is the most positive change that you have seen in the last 3 to 5 years in your industry that specifically affected your organization? And any of you can go first, but one of you must.
I'll go first. It's right in front of me. I got 20 seconds. The most positive change is that around the nation, not necessarily in this county, around the nation, builders are they're grabbing onto this new technology, advanced framing techniques, and better ways to build homes that use 20% less wood, 30% less energy. These are becoming standards everywhere but here. But I think it's coming for us. I mean, we're starting to pick it up. So I'm encouraged that even the NHB, the National Association of Home Builders, is starting to grasp onto this and say, hey, this makes sense. So overall, I'm just glad that the industry's starting to hold on.
Awesome. Thanks, Trey.
I think probably technology for us, because we have a lot of people, people moving in or people signing management agreements, tenants signing rental agreements. We communicate with our board members. Everything is all through technology. So we used to, have this big deal about somebody come in and sign their lease and all that. Nobody does that anymore. Everybody signs it, electronically. Inspections are done electronically. Videos are, back and forth. Communications with board members, or everybody logs into their website, looks at your violation, if any of you in a homeowners association know what that is. So all of those things have actually helped because it just speeds up the communication. Sometimes I do think that whole thing about, okay, let's just pick up the phone and quit this 20 email chain. We all probably need to learn when that needs to stop, and you really do need to talk to somebody. But I think technology for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Carmen.
I would say, I think people know that the commercial building industry is really the largest user of energy in the country, and I think that the LEED and sustainability and green initiatives that are looking at energy reduction and the environments that people work in, and those things ultimately making their way into the building code so that it's required. I think those are by far some of the most positive changes that have happened in our industry and are continuing.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Lee?
And I touched on this before, but the speed of communication has just made a huge difference. I wasn't quite old enough to start back when you had to look up listings once a week in the new book that was phone book size that came out, and that was as fast as you got the information. But now it's instant, and so you have the information, and your clients have the information, and there's a lot of ways to get that communication across online. So that's a huge difference.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, how about a round of applause for our panelists? Thanks to each of you. Very much appreciate your time. And it was great dealing with you. Thanks for all of you coming in and spending the morning with us, and hope you have a great day.